Hello and welcome to the breakfast on Plus TV Africa. My name is Jamb Agaji. We sincerely apologize for starting a little bit late, but we're hoping that the little time that we have, we're going to make the best of it. Today is the 6th of May 2025, and we're glad that you are a part of our journey this morning. Okay, we'll just go straight to the top trending issues and then take a break, and when we return with the papers. But first of all, know that what we are going to be discussing this morning will be very, very key. Federal government may borrow to pay 4 trillion naira power sector debt. That's according to the Minister of Power, Delabu. And EFCC arrest very dark man over cyber stalking petition. Will also look into that. We hear that he's been released at this moment, but details are not yet out why he was arrested in the first place and what happened, that made them to go there, what charges he has at all. But we will discuss about that and issues relating to that. But like I said, we are going to go to top trending issues right away. And the first one is Tinubu lifts border fuel ban for Yewa North communities. President Bola Tinubu has lifted 6-year restriction on the sale of supply of petrol within 20 kilometers of Nigeria's border with the Republic of Benin, restoring operations to 5 filling stations across Imeko, Ilara, Ojaodon, and Ihumbe in Yewa North Imeko Afon Federal Constituency. The move ends a policy instituted under the previous administration, which has severely limited local access to fuel and driven up transportation costs for residents and businesses. The member of the House of Representatives, Boyega Isiaka, spearheaded the reversal through sustained advocacy, joining the House Committee on Customs and Excise for an oversight visit to the Nigerian Customs Services Ogun 1 Area Command, engaging security agencies and raising the issue on the floor of the House. His efforts persuaded both the customs leadership and the presidency to restore fuel sales in these long-neglected border towns. Isiaka hailed the decision as a restoration of dignity and step towards economic justice, which is he urged the filling stations operators and community members to comply fully with regulations. He also called for continued dialogue on fully reopening the border in a way that safeguards national security while promoting local prosperity. Well, I applaud the House of Reps member and also the federal government for doing this. I'm sure it has a human face. There are just two things that are my concern. The fact that these things were closed because of whatever reason led to transportation to that area skyrocketing, and it means that now that this thing has come down or the restriction has been removed, it is expected that the transportation will come down. I think something needs to be done to ensure that this transportation comes down. Maybe making government buses get to that place more, maybe some kind of regulations or talking or engaging with the NURTW or whoever is involved so that the people will know that what the government has done is really in their own interest. Because if you remove the restrictions and then the price of the fuel still is as high as it was, then there was no point even removing it in the first place. So we should find a way around it. I know sometimes when you say things like this, they will say the government shouldn't meddle in someone else's business. The government cannot regulate a business that it doesn't own. But in some ways, I think the government can engage people who are involved. So if they were paying 10,000 for a journey that they should have taken for 500 naira or 1,000, for instance, you know that these people, if you talk to them well, politely, and with all the strategies that you have, put them on the table and see how these people can see what you saw before you remove these restrictions. Otherwise, the purpose will be defeated. And then to the people who are operating these filling stations, I'm sure that the reasons why these things were removed, maybe because of hoarding, maybe because of trans-border trade. Instead of selling to the people around there, they were now taking this fuel and getting into the next country and selling there. So the people that were supposed to be serviced, or to be served by these filling stations, were not even getting it. So if this is, or this was the problem, or whichever problem it was that made the federal government to put that restriction on the sale of petroleum products in those localities, I think the people who are involved should make sure that it never happens anymore. So it's two ways. The government has lifted the restrictions, but there should be some kind of engagement beyond just lifting the restrictions with the people, the stakeholders that are relevant to this case, so that whatever the people were crying because of this restriction cannot remain, because if it remains, the aim is defeated. And sometimes it's just when you give people the enabling environment, they do evil. And if they do that evil, it comes back to you squarely, and this time it's the government. And on the other hand, those who are the key players in that sector, in those areas, should make sure the reason for which, the reason because of which these things were restricted, or the supply of petroleum products was restricted, should never happen again. Okay, our second top trending issue is Ibas urges military to deliver practical security solutions. Rivers State Sole Administrator, retired Vice Admiral Ibas, has challenged participants of Senior Course 47 at the Armed Forces Command and Staff College, Jaji, to ensure their study tour reports propose actionable actions to Nigerian security challenges. Speaking through the SSG, Professor Ibibi Warinka, during the team's courtesy visit to Government House, Port Harcourt, Ibas emphasized that credible grassroots intelligence is essential, or tackling insecurity that deters investment. Ibas warned that without effective feedback mechanism from rural communities, the very human capital often exploited by criminal elements, internal security efforts will remain illusionary. He urged the officers to go beyond collecting data that can be transformed into concrete strategies to enhance operations and protect lives and properties. Timely advice there for the military personnel and all the security agencies. You have to maybe change your strategies and all that, but be deliberate about it and make sure that insecurity is removed from the very root. He eventually was a military man. He's now retired, but when you are in the military, whether you retire or not, you're still a military man. So he must have had some useful suggestions for them. By the way, he was taken to that state, and one of the excuses was that the security there was collapsing. So we're expecting that now that he's there, he's the new sheriff in town, there will be no crime and criminality in that state at all, because if he cannot do that, if he will still go back to the federal government to say, okay, give me solutions, I cannot do anything, then there's no difference between him and the governor that was removed, even though we still believe that there was no security threat that much that could have led to that, but that's where we are. But anyway, no matter who is giving the advice, if it's credible enough, we take it, and that's what is happening right now. Ibas has said the strategy has to change. The seriousness about security issues have to change and all that. So let's take that advice from a veteran himself, from someone who has been there in the trenches and now is governing a state. And the final one is over 1.5 million candidates score below 200 in the 2025 UTME. That's according to Jamb, the Joint Admissions and Matriculations Board. It revealed that over 1.5 million of the 1,955,069 candidates who sat for the 2025 Unified Tertiary Matriculation Examination UTME scored below 200. Only 420,415 candidates scored above that threshold, meaning 75% fell short of the mark, while less than 1% managed to exceed 300. The data released on Monday paints a concerning picture of academic performance across the country, especially as it relates to access to higher education. The board also noted that only 467 out of 40,247 underage candidates, that is 1.16%, demonstrated exceptional academic ability as defined by the UTME criteria. These candidates will face further stages of assessment before final evaluation. Jamb added that 97 candidates were caught in exam infractions, while 2,157 are under investigation for suspected malpractice. Over 71,000 candidates were absent, with some facing biometric issues still under review. Final result checking details and further clarification will be made public during scheduled press briefing later in the week. I would also like a situation where, when they're making the briefing, they should tell us the schools that these candidates that scored above 200 are coming from. Not necessarily mentioning the schools, but let them tell us whether they are private or public institutions. Let's know whether we have a better private education system than the public ones, because majority of these people come from the public institutions, and then they enter into that place and then they don't pass. A lot of people will put the blame on the students themselves. People of this generation don't study hard, the people of this and that. If you're teaching a toddler, for instance, that attention span is less than 10 seconds, you will devise a means that will be suitable for that toddler so that the toddler can learn at that stage. So if this generation has an attention span which is very short, it falls squarely on the school administrators and the teachers themselves. It's not the students. Yes, the students have a role to play, but if a teacher is good enough, you don't even need to tell the student to go and read. Remember when you were in secondary school, if you are no longer in secondary school, your best teacher, if your best teacher is coming for lectures into the class, wherever you are, you will make sure you are in class because you love the way the teacher was delivering and every other thing that he was doing. You will make sure you will be in his class. Even the ones that were teaching mathematics, some of them were so good that you wouldn't want to miss their classes. So it falls squarely on the teachers and the school administration and the policies that are governing our education system. So if something is not done and our children keep failing and you put the blame on the children, it will, I'd like you to know that whatever failure it is in the education system, it has to do with the policy, it has to do with those who are in control, whether as administrators or as the actual teachers. Something needs to be done deliberately. Our education system is going down. Maybe writing exams is not the way to go. Maybe theory is not the way to go in this generation. We need more practical things, and that's what they're doing outside, because exams that you go into the hall to write may not be a true test of what you know or what you're capable of. Well, let's hope next year there will be an improvement because of what the government will put in place. All right, that's the much we can take on our top trending issues, and we'll take a break. When we return, hopefully, we'll be bringing you the headlines that made it to the front pages of our national dailies today. Stay with us.